Welcome to the Mike Litton Experience Podcast. Mike has over 31 years experience in real estate, finance, and investing. He's passionate about being a father, a teacher, a realtor, an investor, and a leader. Everyone has a story, and our passion is to help them tell it. And now, introducing the host of the Mike Litton Experience, Mike Litton.
So what can you expect from the Mike Litton Experience? You can expect stories that will inspire, motivate, advice that will sharpen your focus, and expert information on real estate, finance, and market conditions. Both of them, and they were starting their first jobs out of college. I said, I need you to print this up. Stay in curiosity, stay out of judgment, and put it up in front of the wall where you work so you look at it every day while you're working. Stay in curiosity, stay out of judgment. It's incredibly important.
Love that. That is so good.
Organize first, then take massive action.
Yeah. And so there's a couple really cool resources at jonalwinson.com. Just got the website up and running. One of which I call our zone territory sheet, right? And so one of the things I think, these phones are a trap, right? These iPhones, we have social media on them. You can quickly get distracted with cell phones. So what I do is I teach and I show an organized document called the zone territory sheet, to where you can geographically organize your territory from top to bottom. So if you're in the northeast part of your territory, I recommend clumping your accounts in that section together. Call it middle of your territory in another zone, south, southeast, southwest, right? And basically set up your territory in such a way to when you go work an area, your defined customers in that market, right? And I think that discipline, and this has everything from account number, account name, their spend last year versus this year, right? New areas of opportunity together. It outlines everything, and it keeps you away from the cell phone. And why CRMs are important. This is kind of a document that should be kind of living shotgun right next to you in the car, to where you can write on it, you can have coffee stains on it all week, and then you can continue to update on your own. So it's helped me be successful. I hope it can help other people as well. So that's one of many things I have there.
Yeah. So one of the things that I found incredibly important in the teaching that I've done about sales is when you're doing a prospect, you need to be taking notes. Seriously, because when they're talking to you and they're telling you the answers to the questions that you just asked them, you're validating them by writing it down. Okay.
So good.
There's too many people that sit there with their hands idle and they don't do anything while somebody's answering their questions. Okay. Those people watch that, man. They clue into that. If you're sitting there taking notes, you're validating what they just said.
Yep.
Okay? And you might even, if you're slow at writing like I am, and slow at thinking like I am sometimes, right? You might even go, hold on, don't say that so fast. What was it? Hold on just a second. Let me get this right. Okay.
Yeah.
And it's literally, it helps them to understand how much you care. People will forget what you did for a living, but they'll never forget how you made them feel.
100%.
Ever, right?
100%.
So let's talk about owning the mental game. This is big, by the way. This was one of the biggest chapters in this book by far, bar none.
Yeah. Yeah. I think in sales, we get beat up so much. We talked about this earlier. We get kicked in the teeth, right? That sounds really harsh, but we'll get 10 no's in one day. And for many people, that breaks us, right? Yeah. And so for me, I refuse to be broken, right? Mm-hmm. And I want to build in people the relentless mindset. That's why we titled it Relentless, right? Mm-hmm. And so handling objections. I've found people like David Goggins, who's a guy who's a very hardcore, he's a West Coast guy, right? Yeah. Who has accomplished all kinds of things. He has the concept of the cookie jar, right? Mm-hmm. Where you put your wins in that jar. And then when life gets tough, you pull those wins out and you read them to yourself, right? And you don't allow yourself to be broken by hardship. And so I feel like so many good reps will throw in the towel too early. And this chapter kind of gives some ideas, such as like the cookie jar that Goggins talks about, and staying mentally tough.
Yeah. So there's a part of your brain that's called the amygdala. And Chris Voss covers it in Never Split the Difference, right?
Yeah.
The amygdala is designed, it's like your fight or flight mechanism in your brain, okay? And it's designed to preserve you. It's designed to protect you. And Goggins is one of those guys that he and Tony Robbins, right? So it's a muscle. It's a muscle, okay? The amygdala is designed to protect you. And so it will give you all kinds of things in your mind. It'll start a conversation in your mind about why you shouldn't go outside. It'll start a conversation in your mind as to why you shouldn't go on that sales call. It'll start a conversation, right? That kind of thing. What Goggins talks about is when that happens, that's a clue for him. He immediately cues off of that, right?
Yep.
And it makes him go, because you can't let the amygdala control you. You have to control it. What Tony Robbins talks about is he does a cold plunge every morning, first thing. And he does it to control his amygdala. His amygdala is telling him, oh, no, it's too cold to even get up this morning. It's too cold to get out of bed. It's too cold to go outside. It's too cold to get in the cold plunge. No, right? But what Tony's saying is, listen, amygdala, when I say go, we're going, period. Okay? That's what the people who are the absolute top performers in the world, if you break it down, they have complete control of that part of their brain.
100%. And they create those systems.
Yeah, it's their trigger.
They create those systems of building that muscle, going through hardship, right, to control that. So you're spot on.
Yeah, it's an absolute muscle, dude.
100%. 100%. So like we have to do that in sales. We have to control the mental side of the game.
That's why I love this chapter so much. And then I get to the next chapter, which I love even more, called Conquering Fear.
Yeah. So I was actually, so a buddy of mine who actually competed in MMA, he's a real tough jujitsu guy. He texts me and goes, dude, I'm not much of a reader, but this was the best chapter, right? And Conquering Fear. And this is coming from the toughest of tough dude, right? Who is in the UFC, all these things, right? So, so he texted me and this really, what I outline in that is things like memorizing. This doesn't sound tough, but memorizing scripture, right? Mm-hmm. Like, I feel like that's a very important thing. When you're told no 10 times in one day, and you repeat, hey, God's not giving me a spirit of fear and timidity, but of power, love, and a sound mind. Like, I think that's tough personally. Right. And I think that that makes me stay relentless when I think other people will wilt, quit, wallow in self-pity. Right. Or I'm like, God's giving me a spirit of power. Right. I'm not wimping out here. So, memorizing scripture, I think I talk about the next play mentality, right? There's times where I created systems in my sales game where, at 8 o'clock in the morning, if I was listening to a podcast like yours, Mike, or someone else's, and I wanted to keep listening, I would turn it off when it hit 8 a.m. because I knew that was go time. And there were so many times where I was like, gosh, I want to keep listening, right? But I knew if I felt that way, there are going to be weaker reps that will keep listening, right? And waste another hour when I needed to take action.
And I'll be ahead of them.
Right. Exactly. Right. Exactly. Yeah. So, so that next play mentality, those early morning calls when I fumbled my words or made a mistake, there were calls where I would literally get off the phone and just laugh.
Yeah.
And I have to tell myself, all right, next play.
Yeah. That's all you can do.
And you got to have that next play mentality, right? Otherwise you kind of wallow, you weaken and wilt,
Yeah. So if God is with us, no man can, right? So it's a big deal. And it's a big deal for people that do what we do for a living. Being in sales, conquering fear is a huge, huge deal. Huge deal.
It's a great chapter. There's a lot more to discuss in that chapter, but yeah.
We could be here for 3 days, but
so I know, man.
The skills of great salespeople. This is a really good book. I'm not joking. I'm very proud of you. You did a great job.
Thanks, man. Thanks. Yeah. So the skills of great salespeople, I kind of took a different approach here. I mean, we all know those certain reps that have that natural charisma or are just really smart, intuitive. I took a different approach here. I'll give you three things. So listen deeply. You nailed it earlier. You said 2 ears and one mouth for a reason, right? There's so many reps that when they're in these sales situations, start blabbering, right? And are too talkative. And sometimes the more intellectual and reserved reps are actually the better reps, because they listen deeply. So listen deeply. Some other things that we we talk about is like, don't assume you know, right? We touched on that earlier on the call, but there are so many situations where we think we know the answer and we really don't.
Yeah.
So stay humble, right? Stay
Stay in
humble,
curiosity.
stay in curiosity.
Yeah.
And so those are the two that I think really we should talk to. We should just highlight now, but that's a great chapter. Again, we could go so many different directions with that one. There's a lot in it.
It's true. There's a lot in this entire book, man. So daily
Yeah.
habits to win.
Yeah. So I really recommend having a morning routine and write it down. I have my structure. I have my daily wins that I need to accomplish each day. But part of that is waking up early. I feel like those early risers are set up for a little bit more success, right? If you don't wake up on time, you're kind of dragging that day and you're behind. For me, it's waking up, having coffee, having water, spending time in the word, right? Meditating, reading. And then I get my mind right and my heart right for the day. And then I'm ready to take it on. Right. And so that's part of my setup. And then, getting some physical activity too is really a game changer. You know this, waking up, going for a run, or like Tony Robbins going for a cold plunge. I'm not quite at Tony's level where I've dabbled in the cold plunge stuff. I'm not hardcore like him yet, but maybe one day I'll be cold plunging. But getting on the bike or going for a run or what I do.
I'm going to spend the rest of my life trying to get up to his level, man. Seriously.
Man,
So,
he's the man.
So, I think the morning routine is so unbelievably important. And I think the biggest part of it for me is getting physical, right? It could be push-ups. It could be sit-ups. It could be air squats. It could be whatever, right? But it's getting your blood pumping, okay? Because you've been sedentary for such a long time sleeping. There's a point where you've got to get your body to a place to where your body's in a peak state. You're not going to get in a peak state by waking up and just having water or having coffee. I mean, coffee helps me, but you know what I mean, right?
Right. Yeah.
Just, you're going to get into a peak state, a peak emotional state, and a peak mental state because of your body. Right? How your body feels and how your body is energizing you. And that oxygen doesn't hurt by any stretch of the imagination, right? So eliminating entitlement.
Yeah, quick. There's a lot in that, but I do think, and there's some cool tools that we have for eliminating entitlement on our website. But I really feel like part of what's wrong with our country these days is people think they're owed things, right? And so there's a story in that chapter that I highlight where my older brother, if there's one thing he's always had right, is no one owes me anything, right? And we're post-college buddies and we're discussing, what we're going to do, what jobs we're going to have. And one of my buddies threw out what he thought he deserved to make. And, my brother caught wind of that and said, nobody owes you anything. He didn't use the word anything. He used a harsher, 4-letter word, but kind of let my buddy have it. And it was a good lesson for me. And throughout my life, going through adversity, no one owes us anything, right? We've got to have a grateful spirit. And it's when we think that we're owed something is when we start to weaken as people, salespeople, men, women, we weaken when we feel like we're owed. And we've got to stay tough, and we've got to not fall into that trap, because it's a big pitfall that many fall into.
It really is. It's kind of like when you're in sports, hanging back on your heels versus getting on the balls of your feet, right? You're on the balls of your feet because you're ready. If you're hanging back on your heels, you're kind of responding. You're kind of receiving, right? Which is not what you want to do, especially in football, right? You could get killed receiving football, receiving the hit, right? Let's talk about responsibilities of a sales rep.
Yeah. So, this kind of leads in nicely because I talk about being grateful, right? Being grateful for the opportunity you have, right? If you're with a good company, you've got a good thing going on. So be grateful, number one. I think there's some other things there that we've got to bring positivity to the teams we're part of. I talk about my experience as a territory manager where I was just focused just on myself, Mike. And, you make up a pretty small package when you're just focused on yourself. And we've got to bring field knowledge back to the sales teams that we're a part of, right? No one wants to be on a team with a lone wolf. Like we had a guy that was part of our team that you text and you wouldn't hear back from for a week. And you're like, really? Like, are you doing that with your customers? Right. And so,
that's your standard.
And that's your standard, right? And for me, I quickly learned that it's my duty, even, whatever organization you're part of, to bubble up feedback from the field and be a good, positive teammate, right? You've got to be a good teammate. You can still be excellent and focused on your business and still be positive and bring that to your team. So I really think there are things like that are really important to call out in that chapter.
Yep, I totally agree. Go ahead.
Yeah. I mean, and then the other idea was just sharing ideas, right? You've got to be able to share ideas. Don't keep those to yourself, because when you share them, just like on our call now, Mike, you sharing ideas with me, I have a page of notes that I'm going to go back to, right? It makes you better, Mike, right? It elevates your game when you share and you teach. So it's not a thing where you're giving away your secrets. It's a thing that is actually going to make you better. And I think most reps don't quite understand that, especially early in the game.
Yeah. If you want to master something, I don't care what it is. Doesn't matter what it is. It could be underwater basket weaving, right? If you want to go out and you want to master something, go teach it. Go teach it. So I have a massive, and I know you can't tell, but I hide it well, but I have a massive amount of passion about helping people, right? I am all about teaching. I'm all about mentoring. I'm all about coaching. I'm all about helping them get to where they want to be. And quite honestly, I want them to succeed oftentimes more than they even do.
Yeah.
It's a real sickness that I have. I'm not joking, right? But it's one of those things where when you care that much, when you care that much, you will focus on them and you will pour into them. You'll figure out what they need. Okay. It's just like sales. You'll find out what your teammate needs and you'll pour into them.
Yeah.
Right. And the people around you, that rising tide that lifts all ships. Okay. As you rise, as you continue, that tide helps to lift everybody else too.
Yep.
Okay. We have a thing on our podcast called Mike Time. And it was something that one of our realtors in our Keller Williams office termed herself. She would call me up when she was frustrated and she'd go, I just need 5 minutes of Mike Time.
I love it.
They're absolute lowest, completely frustrated, ready to quit, the whole thing, right? And we'd get on the phone and we'd talk 5 minutes, 3 minutes, 10 minutes, whatever. But we would talk. And by the time we were done, she was all put back together and she was ready to go out and take on the world, right?
Yeah.
So it's important that you realize as a leader in sales that you're not going to succeed as an organization if you don't pour into your people. And your people need to know that they need to pour into each other.
Yep. Yeah.
Right? It's incredibly
you're spot on. You're speaking my language, because that's how I'm passionate about coaching and could go on and on about that. But I really do feel like that's as a sales manager, that's our number one priority is coaching. And the biggest return on investment. Our biggest return on investment is helping our team win. So
totally agree.
Cool.
Let's talk about the power of goals.
Yeah. I mean, write them down. I mean, it's such a powerful thing. Some people may feel like this is played out, but I'm a big believer in it. I still have sticky notes from 2015 when I said I'm going to be rookie of the year. And I just put rookie of the year by the end of the year, 2015. Right. Mm-hmm. And this is way back when, but I still had these proofs, these receipts of how power of goals work. And I've got numerous, and I think there's power because you're subconscious. You think about this, right? You write it down and you tell other people, you're more likely to achieve those. And so I think write them down. And there's a really cool story in there of a guy who won every single year. Mm-hmm. And at some point I was writing my goals weekly, and the light flipped, and I said, you know what? I mean, this is a regular guy just like me, and I can beat this person, right? In 2016. And I went all out. I did the things that are in this book, and by the grace of God was able to win. And I think it was in part because I was consistently writing my goals, and I quickly realized, like, hey, if someone's going to win, it might as well be me, right? And
Absolutely.
I want to encourage others with that.
So I had a coach tell me one time, are you about achieving your goals, or are you committed to it? Which one is it?
Yeah.
Are you about it, or are you committed to it? And what he said to me was, he said, look, I don't want you writing your goals weekly. I want you writing them twice a day. When you get up in the morning, I want you to write them down. When you go to bed at night, I want you to write them down. And twice a day, I would write my goals down. Do you know I completely smashed through my goals?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, seriously, within 6 months, I had my annual goals smashed through. And now I was working on the rest of the year.
Yep.
Right. I had to set my bar higher. So something to think about in terms of that. Right. So let's shovel some rocks.
Man, I love this chapter. Just kind of talk about in this chapter, I came home from about a 3-day field ride, kind of like where I'm sitting right now. I was in my truck. I pulled up and, quickly realized there were a ton of rocks, I think there were 8 tons in my driveway of river rocks, of those little pebbles. And I remember just thinking, like, what is my wife doing? Right. And she's a consummate like housekeeper. Right. So she's always doing things. And so like I quickly realized that I could let these rocks sit for days and probably get an HOA warning letter. Right. Or I could put my ear pods in and shovel the rocks. And as I was shoveling those rocks, I quickly realized that shoveling rocks is kind of like sales, right? You don't have to be the smartest person. You don't have to be the strongest person, right? You just got to have that relentless temperament and that never give up spirit that I preach throughout this book. That, when life gets difficult, we're going to bite down on that mouthpiece and we're going to shovel the rocks. And sales is not always a glamorous business. Most of the time it's not glamorous, right? And it's hard work.
Most businesses is glamorous.
It's life, right?
Yeah. Productivity itself is not glamorous. You just got to keep going. You just got to put one foot in front of the other and keep after it, right? Just keep shoveling. So redefine failure for a second.
Yeah. So my sweet little Ansley's 7 right now. And, a lot of times at the dinner table, I'll ask her like, hey, what did you fail at today? And she'll always like roll her eyes and say nothing because she's, perfectionist. But I'm starting to learn more about myself as I'm being a parent, right? And I really want our household to be a house, kind of like you said earlier in the call, of not being afraid to fail, right? Not setting our bar too low. And honestly, if you're not failing, you're probably not trying very hard, right? Like you talked about, Mike.
Your amygdala is kicking in and you're letting it control you.
Bingo.
Yeah. So be you.
Be you. So this is one of my favorite chapters. Is the last chapter in the book, but I'll give you a quick story from that chapter. Jack, who was my New Orleans rep, I inherited him on my team in 2019, and this guy, was funny, was goofy, was out there. Anyone who wants to live in New Orleans and cover that whole geography, you got to have a special spirit about you, and he definitely had it. But I quickly realized early on our coaching and our field rides, he was not himself in front of the customers. And I at one point we were leaving an account and I just kind of let him have it a little bit in a fun but productive way. I was like, man, you got to start being yourself. Right. And his face got red. He got really mad at me. And I was kind of like just coaching him with some tough love. And after about 20 minutes of being a little mad at me in the car, he's like, you're right. And what we saw with Jack is he went from bottom of the field to a top 10 producer by the end of the year. And I saw Jack flip when I empowered him. Jack, be you, right? Don't try to be this buttoned up person that you're not. Like, be fun, Jack, cut up, make jokes. And he's the type of guy that when I picked him up from field rides, when I picked him up one time, he had just gotten done with meeting with a bunch of nurses and was like, John, you should have seen me in there. I should be a game show host, right? He's a guy that was, he's like, but this job will suffice for now. Right. And he's
Right.
a guy that just brought a lot of humor and a lot of fun. And I really want to empower people, no matter how you're wired. If you're an introvert, that's okay too. If you're an extrovert, be you, right? And live from your identity, back to chapter 2. And I think you're going to see your sales game take new heights. So
Yeah. So I have a suggestion, if you're okay with it. I know,
please.
imagine. All right. So Tony Robbins, I know I'm a big Tony Robbins fan, but Tony Robbins has a thing called the DISC. It's an assessment.
Yeah.
Right? Okay.
Yeah.
And everybody has their, a combination of the D, the I, the S, and the C. I don't happen to have a combination of any of those. I'm all D. The I, the S, and the C are all below the line.
Yeah.
And, we joke that we sent out a search party looking for them a long time ago, and they still haven't come back.
Yeah.
So the long and the short of it is, I know how I'm wired. I know from that assessment, I know how I'm wired, right? And if a lot of your salespeople are going to be what we call I-dominated personality types, right? Their single greatest fear is rejection.
Right.
So I-dominated personality types, you never tell them no, even though they're in a business where they get no all the time. They just need to be prepared for the fact that that's their single greatest fear, right? So with somebody like Jack, I would have sat with him and just said, hey, let me ask you a question. What's holding you back from being yourself in these sales, in these sales presentations, right? What's holding you back?
Yeah.
Right. And we would have had a conversation about whatever it was that he felt like was holding him back. And I do everything with questions. Can you tell? Right.
So yeah, it's Socratic method, right?
Right. I'm just constantly pulling it out of them. I'm constantly pulling it out of them. So, yeah, you gotta be you, man. It's a big, big deal.
Yeah, I'm big in the DISC, the DISC profile. I like strength finders a lot. I feel like strength finders are the cheat codes to your team. We talk about that in the book as well. Understanding how you're wired and playing to your strengths is so important in sales, right?
Yeah,
so
because if you know it going in, right, you know what you're dealing with, because this is talking to you, right? And you're having a conversation with yourself. And what you need to be prepared for is, hey, I don't like rejection, but being in sales, I've signed up for this. So I need to work that muscle so I can deal with rejection. I need to work that muscle so I can deal with, I don't like being, people taking my time. That's what a D is all about, right? Ds are all about being in control and not being taken advantage of and that kind of thing, right? It also helps them when they can recognize those traits in other people.
Yeah. It's good. That's so good, man. 100%. 100%. Yeah, it's good stuff.
It definitely helps. Listen, thank you so much for being here. I really, really appreciate it. Congratulations on the book. I'm so incredibly proud of you. You did an amazing job with this. It's the best sales book I've read. I am really, really happy with it. And I know you have to be, right? You really thought this through, and you like I said, you filled a ton of potholes that I've seen in other books. And I'm super, super proud of you, bud.
Wow, Mike. Thank you, brother. I can't thank you enough. Appreciate your friendship and appreciate you helping me spread the word about this book. I think it's going to help a lot of people.
It really will. And if these sales managers are smart, they'll buy a bunch of them and give them to their sales reps, and then they'll teach them out of this book. I'm not joking.
Yeah. Thank you. Means a lot. Buddy. All right, brother. Take care.
Thanks again.
Thanks.
We hope you enjoyed another episode of the Mike Litton Experience. If you did, do us a favor, smash that subscribe button, tell your friends, family, and coworkers about our program, and wherever you get your podcasts, please leave us a rating. It helps us to connect with quality people just like you.
And that's a wrap. Another episode of the Mike Litton Experience in the books. Reach out to Mike on Instagram at Litton Realty. Want to meet with Mike? Check out calendly.com/Rio760.